It's the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast, where we talk about all things consensual non-monogamy, polyamory, open relationships, swinging, and how you can have secure and sexy relationships, no matter how you do them. Now here's your hosts, Tara and Andre. Hey, Tara here. Before we jump into this episode, we wanted to share that TNA and the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast will be at the Toronto Everything to Do with Sex show from October 18th to the 20th, 2024. And we have some free passes to give away to our listeners. Check out the show notes to find the link to enter, and make sure you do it before Wednesday, October the 16th at 5 p.m. as we'll be making the draw that evening. See you there.
Today, we're talking about the 69 ways to amplify your sex life with your partners.
69 ways, huh?
69 or, in and about there.
And that is such a cool thing, right? Where we can reinvent ourselves. We can find opportunities to find newness in things, right?
Yeah.
And it's all about. So yeah, increase your experience of the universe. Be open to things. See if you can say yes.
Yeah, for sure. And that's totally what we're talking about today.
Awesome.
So let's jump in. So 69 ways to amplify your sex life. I don't think we're going to get to 69 ways. What do you think?
No, but it's not about the destination. It's about the efforts and the journey of discovery going there, right?
Yeah.
And 69 is a lofty number to aspire to. It's a good place to go to. If you can get there, fantastic, enjoy it. But yeah, let's just start with a few.
Yeah. Well, I had the idea that we would just run through a list of 69 things you could do, and it would be fun. But I think the point is that of today is to talk about how we might move beyond what we normally stick to with our partners. And we don't want to give you all the answers, because I think part of the fun is discovering new things for yourself.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And maybe, if we were to ask 69 people what 69 things they have in the list, we might get 69 different responses.
Yeah, exactly.
So we might have certain things on our list, but they may or may not resonate with you. Find out what it is that you like. What do you prefer? How do you communicate what it is you're wanting?
Yeah. Well, one of our members in Let's Talk Polyamory said, because I posted about what gets you excited, and we left it specifically vague to see what people will say.
Yeah.
People in the group said that what gets them excited is swimming, and they actually go on swimming dates, and that gets them all moving and wet and excited and having some physical activity, and that gets them excited. So I love that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I would not have thought to put that on my list, but now it's there. So 70 things.
Yeah, 70 things. So, when you're in a long-term relationship, would you consider us being in a long-term relationship 5 years in?
It feels long for me. I've not been, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but just that the majority of my relationships historically only went to 1, 2, maybe 3 years. So yeah, this feels like a long-term relationship.
Yes. Yeah. So I think when you're in a long-term relationship and also you're non-monogamous, consensually non-monogamous, and then you have that you have new partners that are coming into the mix. So you get that new relationship energy that comes up. I think, one of the things you could experience is if your partner's having those experiences, it might feel threatening. They're having that new relationship energy. They're excited. They're trying new things. And you may feel that they no longer desire you. And then on the other side, for the partner experiencing the NRE, they could question their actual long-term relationship. Does this mean there's something about my long-term relationship that's not good anymore, or that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I think that is on the other side of that NRE, that new relationship energy, is that it is unknown. It's new, right? Mm-hmm. Compared to being with my partner of however long, have we already started to develop patterns? Are there routines? Am I in any way predictable, right? So we might look at some ways that we can kind of mix that up and reinvent all of these new experiences. So we said it, ad nauseum before, but rather than going to 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, let's see if we can throw in a 7, 7, 7 or 5 or whatever it might be, right? So mixing it up a little bit. And when we see our partner or when we experience that NRE, it's because we don't know what their matchup is going to be, right? Are they going to be 1, 5, 7, 4? We don't know. It's new. It's exciting. But if we find ourselves kind of lacking that, then let's not just simply default to that's just the way it is, or we leave it to our partner to reinvent it. What can we do to be an active participant in this so that we can stimulate it in that way and find it kind of new and inviting?
Yeah, and exactly. You can also ask the question, if you are having new relationship energy, it's like, how can I bring that same energy into my current relationship? Like, what can be great about this? Oh, there's some opportunity to try new things, or you might have some realizations that you may not had before. Like, I know working with some clients, some couples and stuff like that, one of the things they experience when going out, especially if they have a whole household and kids and a marriage and all kinds of things associated with that relationship, when they're in another relationship and having sex or having fun, it allows them to be a different person. So that is a hint to one of the things, like, how can we be a different person and not just the mom or the thing that we attach to our maybe longer term relationship.
It makes me think back to the idea of putting the nail polish on or the makeup or putting on a wig. It's an easy way of slotting into a whole new, different persona, right? You take on this role. And it doesn't have to go to that extent. We could simply do that by putting on sexy lingerie, for example. It might give us an invitation to be a little bit more risque, a little bit more playful in that way, right? But, that might often be the manifestation, the exhibition of when we already feel that way. But sometimes we're not really feeling it yet. And it's almost, I think what you had mentioned a while back about creating the desire, even if it's not there. So we will simply go at it and then it'll follow. It's an interesting thing too. I read something not too long ago about people who might be, well, primarily penis owners who might have ED issues, right?
Mhm.
Called deficiency or dysfunction. And they will be encouraged to they might attempt penetrative sex, even with somewhat flaccid penis. And that just already being there will start to fuel that desire, fuel those things that will create that erection. So it's the same thing, male or female. If we aren't yet feeling it, could we demonstrate the behavior and then have the feeling afterwards? Right? It's kind of like CBT therapy, right?
Mhm.
We can take any of those, the cognitive, the behavioral, or the feelings, and we can mix those up to create one or the other. So if we're not feeling so desirous as yet, could we do certain things to help promote it and prompt it? And the answer is yes.
Exactly. And, we're not going to get into a ton about desire, but this is one of the modules in polyamory mastery is about desire, intimacy, and sex in monogamous relationships. So it's a bit about what we're talking about. But I think it's important to define what desire is.
Yeah, that's a great question. So do you have a concise definition that you want to share, or
I happen to one.
I thought you might.
So, desire is a strong feeling of wanting to have something or wishing for something to happen.
Sounds great. My only thing again with that is, if I don't have that strong desire yet, do I find myself an opportunity to fault myself? Oh, I should be feeling more desirous, or I should feel that way. What do you think about that? I mean, because some people often say, well, I don't feel that way, and I feel as though I should feel that way.
Yeah, I felt that way often. And I think as I've gotten older, I think that's become a bit more commonplace. But the thing I like to remind myself about is that you don't have to have that lust feeling. There's the idea of responsive desire. So it's like you said, starting, if you're a penis owner, starting with a flaccid penis, or maybe not having the desire right away.
Mm-hmm.
What if we just start interacting with our partner and then see what happens? And then that whole idea is that you can build that desire as you go. So you can start with sexual neutrality, have some stimuli, and then work towards arousal and then getting into the intimacy. So it can take a bit of time,
Right.
But being open to the idea that responsive desire is great too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. But in that also, we should always go at it in a place of invitation, right? Of a place of making the offer, but without expectation or pressure, right? So it may or may not result in orgasm. It may or not result in direct genital stimulation or PIV or any of those things. But we try to be open and accept the invitation from others or even from ourselves, right? Self-discovery, taking out our toys and figuring out like, what do I like? What do I not like? Where does this work? How does this happen?
Yeah. Well, that's the whole idea about amplifying your sex life. It isn't just about, you know, PIV or actual sexual engagement with our genitals, for example. It can be much more than that. And in fact, a lot of that stuff is actually pretty darn exciting. So, yeah.
PIV, for those who might be just joining and don't know, it generally means penis and vagina, but there are many other forms of intercourse as well. So I wonder if we need something else. I mean, because it could be PIA.
Yep.
Or a whole bunch of different things, right? So it's the idea that we have this kind of end run, this goal that we're working towards, and how we might participate in it, but it isn't the only goal. It isn't necessarily that thing, because what happens is if we have that kind of goal or that target and we don't go there, do we feel as though we failed in some way or fallen short or not met the expectations that we had or of our partners? So we want to resist that being the end goal in this, right? It's really about being present emotionally and allowing for a connection, allowing for the experience, allowing for the pleasure without the judgment.
Exactly. So we'd love to hear from you what you think. Like, how do you anticipate? How do you increase desire? How do you get into the mood? What gets you excited? So here's we like I said, we promised 69 things, but we're going to start with 5 to get you started with some subcategories. So here we go. So number 1, scheduling.
Yes.
Paying yourself first and prioritizing sex.
Yeah, that's good. I've heard that term before. Okay, I've used that term before. So it's kind of like the idea of saving, right? If we take $1 and we pay all our bills and we say, well, I hope, whatever's up, I'm going to try and save, we may or may not get to it. Whereas some people argue what we should do is we should take 5 or 10% off the top, put that towards our savings, and then we'll live off the other 90%. And it's kind of the same thing. If we do all the things that the day is requiring of us, we might find ourselves in bed at around 11 to 12 o'clock at night, and then say, okay, like, I'm tired, but let's try and go at it. And then kind of like make a half-hearted effort. And if it doesn't work out, then it kind of makes an association. It's not so blah, blah. Whereas we might also say, you know what? I'm important. Sex is wonderful. It's something that makes me feel wonderful about myself or my partner. It's a way of connecting. Let me schedule that into my calendar as a priority, and I'll build the rest of my day around that.
Yeah.
And the times that we've done that, it's been fantastic, right? It really shapes the day and how we feel about ourselves otherwise. But it's really the demonstration of how we are prioritizing ourselves, how we are important enough. And
yeah, exactly. And I think for me, I've been finding, and this, is that because I get up in the morning quite early during the week, by the time, like you said, even 10 o'clock hits, even 9 o'clock hits, like I'm like, I'm on the down pain. And sometimes we can find our way to it. I think we like to have some intimate moments that may not end in sex, which I think is also great. Realizing when your sort of power hours are, like when is the time that you feel the most energetic? And for me, it's in the morning, in the afternoon, like before dinner. You know what I mean? So I think we've been trying to fit that into our schedule a bit more and making it fun and playful. Like, ooh, we're going to take a break, partway through our day. I have time at this time. Do you have time? And sometimes it's a little quickie and sometimes it's a little longer. But I feel like it's helped me a lot personally with continuing and like amplifying our sex life, not feeling it at other times of the day.
Right. Yeah, because when we're tired, that tiredness can kind of work against us, right? It's not necessarily the most inviting time. So we find times that would be good.
Yeah. Well, we did, this might be TMI, but we did try to do some stuff yesterday after Pride, after our little nap that we had, and we were exhausted, but it was still super fun.
But we took a nap.
We did take a nap.
We took a nap.
Yes, exactly. So, scheduling sex is number 1 way to amplify your sex life. It was actually some clients that I work with, a couple that's sort of fairly new to non-monogamy. We were talking about some ideas and we're talking about scheduling. And I had made the suggestion that they take turns alternating, setting up sort of like a surprise date for the other. So the other person just knows where they have to be, what time, and what to wear or what to bring or whatever it is. And then it kind of builds that anticipation. So
Mhm.
they found that super fun. So they were alternating weeks of, planning a special date night. So
Yeah, it's a great exercise. It really is, and I love the idea that while we are anticipating, while we're looking forward to it, which is in itself something beautiful, have a desire to look forward to something, we are creating fantasies in our mind, right? They might not necessarily match what the reality is, and we are cognizant of that, but we allow ourselves to go into this fanciful way, and we can tease about it too, right? We can kind of ask, like, what's happening on Thursday, or like, are we going to run into this, that, or other, whatever it might be, whatever thoughts come in. It's just more opportunity to create greater depth and more connection, more fantasy of it. So it's a wonderful, great exercise.
yeah, that's awesome. So that leads us into number 2, increasing the sexual energy
Mm.
as a way of amplifying your sex life. So, like you said, building anticipation, increasing the energy. So some ways of doing it, like you said, are teasing each other.
Mm-hmm.
Stop and start making out.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think we did a bit of that in public yesterday. We're not too shy, but in those moments when you stop me, because we're in the parade and everything that's going on, but I instantly felt connected to you and felt present. You had a great way of bringing me in, and it's amazing because when we embraced, all of the noise, all the crowd, all that stimuli just went by the wayside, and I was able to just be present with you for that moment, and it was beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
But we can practice that every day, right? I mean, in between business calls or whatever it is, there's always a moment where we might just be able to make that quick connection and say, "Hey, how are you? I'm here. I'm seeing you."
Yeah, I love it. So another thing you can do if you're not prone to walking around nude, you can flash your partner during the day, like, hey, do you want some of this? If you could see them. Or if you're, someone you don't live with, maybe sending them a little sexy video or having a sexy FaceTime or something like that.
Right. So get creative with it. Have fun with it.
Yeah, have fun.
Yeah, yeah.
You could leave a note, before you leave for the day, like this is, what's going to happen later, that
Mm.
sort of thing. Like go old school there, leave a little note on the counter if you leave with someone, or send them a text.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I
You
just thought maybe I'll leave you a note in your underwear drawer that says, "Please wear this."
know,
Fill it up.
ooh, fill it up. Ooh, I like it. I like it. So another thing you can do, and I have to admit, I'm not really good at this, but I'd love to practice some more, is to engage in some dirty talk.
Yeah.
That's a way of increasing sexual energy.
I think that's such an important point as well, right? Because uh, it's just another little thing that we have at our disposal. And is it utilized enough? I personally don't think that I'm so good at it. I find that I've got 2 years. I speak in this clinical voice, or I go right away to the point where it's like triple X rated. But in between that, I think I could stand some improvement. So I will definitely check out Dr. Liz Powell's suggestions on that, and anything else that people have. I'd love to hear from the group. How do they engage in sexy talk, pillow talk, dirty talk, whatever it is? And what do they like to hear, and what do they use as an approach?
Yeah. Like I like how Dr. Liz talks about in her book, there's a couple stages of dirty talk, which is good to know, right? So there's a setting the scene stage. So before you talk dirty with someone you don't know or a new partner or something like that, like asking them for consent. Is it okay if I speak dirty to you?
Yeah, especially if you don't know the person.
You can even talk about terms. Like some people will find certain words like arousing, and some the same words for another person they can find, off-putting. Like someone might say, I hate the word cunt, but I like pussy. You know what I mean? I love the word cock, but dick seems dirty or silly to me. Those kinds of things.
Well, yeah. Our penis is too clinical, whatever it might be. So I wonder then how we find out though. How do we gauge that? So do we go through the glossary or the dictionary and say, was this word okay? Is that word okay? How do we get that sense? Because for me and others I know who've told me the same, they're not always quite sure where they might find themselves on that map, or what the boundaries their partners or future partners boundaries might be. So how does one go about finding that information?
Well, I think that it starts with the first conversation, like with anything, right? Like, are there certain words you like to hear or you don't like to hear? But like, what kinds of words do you like to hear? Like, that's a good way of saying it.
Right.
Or if there's certain things that you don't like to hear. Like, I feel like I'm pretty open to one thing. I don't, there's something about the word cunt, for example, that I don't like, but I do love pussy and that sort of thing. And I don't know. You can.
That's such an interesting question. I wonder, the transference, the association we have towards certain things. So if I were to say to you, you have a beautiful pussy or you have a beautiful cunt, it's going to create two different feelings.
Yeah, I just don't like cunt as much. I guess because sometimes people use that term in a more derogatory way, which is
Right.
horrible in itself.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it's just not the word that I like.
Well, it's good to let it be known what you're preferring and not. It's kind of like, and it needn't be limited, obviously, towards, the verbal communications, right? You might say, well, I'm the type of person who really enjoys, having my hair pulled hard or gently, or, having my derriere slapped, whatever it might be. So we might start off the conversation with saying, I'm the type of person that likes this, or I would really like it if you were to say this, or how would you feel if I said that?
Yes, exactly. Well, you're getting into number 3, communicating your needs and desires.
Yes.
I just wanted to finish quickly the dirty
Yeah,
talk.
please. Okay, let's go back to dirty talk.
That's okay. So
Always-
setting the scene with the first part, like asking for consent and what
Always ask for consent.
start slow. So building up, like you might not jump into like, I want to suck your cock or, whatever. Like I would like to fist you, whatever it is.
This is a family program, by the way. Right? Hi, Mom.
Okay.
I'll see you, Mom. Keep going. It's all good, all natural.
Yeah. So starting slow and then building the anticipation. So building the anticipation up. And I think this can happen dirty talk leading up to a sexual encounter, or it could be all that there is, right? Just talking sexy. Like some people like to sext and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think an important part of the process in dirty talking is also the feedback loop. So let them know what you're enjoying and how much. Like, I'm so wet. Like it, so there's a bit of a two-way communication in your dirty talk, right?
So when you say that, it makes my heart race.
Yeah. Are you saying that right now, or are you just saying?
Well, as an example, right? So you might offer something, and then I might acknowledge it by telling you how it makes me feel, what reaction is, how it inspires me, what it makes me think of, what it makes me want to do.
Yeah.
Or I might match you and say, well, you might compliment me on my elbows, and I might say, well, you have beautiful kneecaps.
That's true.
Well,
And then following the feedback, then just thanking the person. I know that sounds funny, but planning for the next time. Like, I really liked when you said this. So kind of closes the loop on that dirty talk. You're learning with somebody. So
right. Well, that's a good point that you said, the learning, because at first it might feel rather contrived, right? It might feel like this kind of awkward exercise, but the more we go at it, the more fluid we become in it, the easier it becomes, and it kind of just rolls off our tongue, and we're able to have that as one more dimension, right? Where it's one more sense that we're utilizing that can be titillating and stimulating.
yeah, exactly. I love that. And then the other part of increasing the sexual energy, which is still number 2, is having some time apart. So building that anticipation. So that's exactly what we're doing right now. We spent an intense weekend together, and now we're apart for a bit.
We have the luxury of that, but I wonder if we are cohabitating with kids and all kinds of other considerations, how might we still create some time apart, whether it's physically or psychically or emotionally? But what do you do in scenarios like that?
For sure. Well, I think this is when the idea around disentanglement comes into play, right? So disentanglement being, sometimes when someone's a couple, especially if you're married or partnered for a long time and living together, your lives become like intermeshed like this, like your friends are the same, you do the same activities, etc. So it's
to the point where you're actually known as one entity, right?
Yeah.
You stop being individuated.
Yeah. So coming back to a bit of more of your autonomy and your I-ness, right? So even if you are living together, maybe you go out and do things on your own, go see a movie, go see friends, have other hobbies outside your relationship. Like,
Yeah. And, as you said, yeah.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
Well, as you say that, that we go and we have some time to ourselves, that's wonderful because I am ego-centered. So I am present with myself and I know that I'm wanting these things. But I should also, I think, or might also be well served having the awareness, how can I clear some space for my partner? How can I move over so that they have a little bit of breathing room as well? So can I take the dog and the kids out? Can I do whatever it is that would lighten the other person's load? It'll create space. But what happens is, in that consideration, very often the demonstration is acknowledged, and then the other person becomes more generous. They want to give you some as well. And then having that space creates an opportunity for desire. I miss you. I'd like to get together with you. Let's hang out. Let's go on a date.
Yeah. Is that what you did? I feel like you're saying that, and now I'm like, is that what you did for me for this week?
Not consciously so. No, I think it just works that way. But I'm realizing the benefits of it, and it will prompt that. Every time we spend time apart, we have this longing for each other. There's also this thankfulness that we have breathing room. But when we do see each other again, we are happy to rekindle.
Mm-hmm.
And people can do that on a daily basis, on an hourly basis.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I keep saying exactly because I'm like, that's such a great point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this is time to yourself and with other people, maybe not necessarily on dates. Because I think sometimes what happens to people when they're in open relationships is they use that extra time to be on dates with other people. So they're never really getting that time on their own as well. So I think it's important as well, in my view. Agreed. Okay, so now we can get on to number three.
Number three
way of amplifying your sex life is you hinted at it. So communicating your wants and needs and desires.
So how do I go about sharing my fantasies with you? Right. So do I communicate them directly? Do I hint at them? Do I try to enact them? Have you watched my fantasies develop over time? Do you see my communication style?
Is this a trick question?
Well, no, it's just observation, just wanting to know.
I think that you share things that you're interested in, so you communicate them with me.
Huh.
I think sometimes we're, maybe both of us are a bit more subtle about it, and we might suggest it in the moment. So, right?
Yeah, true.
Or is there something else you were thinking about?
No, not necessarily. But you did kind of touch on it, like the communication of it. If I don't come out and say it explicitly, am I dropping hints about it? And that might even be conscious of it, right? It might just come out. But if we are tuned to our partner, then we might be able to hear these things and store them in our bank for when we are able to execute them or find ways to help execute them. So there's a fantasy that you've shared with me on a couple of occasions that, I know that it's there, and I'm hoping at one point we'll be able to pull the trigger on that, right? So, that one's going to take a bit of planning. But we can definitely go at it. But it's the idea of communicating these fantasies, having these fantasies, allowing for them, and then, if we're so choosing, communicating them, sharing them.
Yeah. So I think too that part of this is not just assuming that our partner will know what we want. So the communication part is the key part, because I think sometimes we might get into a situation where we're hoping someone will do something or do something differently or approach you in a different way or try a new thing, and it doesn't happen. And then we wonder, like, why isn't this thing happened? And then, we don't realize that we've forgotten, like our partners are not mind readers. And if we do want something in our relationships and honestly in our life, it's about asking for what you want.
Absolutely. I agree with that wholeheartedly. So if we don't get what we're wanting, if we've not communicated it, then what's at play? What's stopping us from saying what we would prefer or what we're not wanting, right? Because that happens too. Sometimes things are going down and we might not be feeling it. Are we able to announce, look, at this time, I'm not wanting it, I'm not feeling it, whatever. And it needn't be justified, right? We could simply say, I don't want this. But the point is, what is it that's going on that's not allowing us to get it, and how can we get more of it? And it's by communicating these thoughts and feelings, right? Being comfortable to do so. Yeah.
Communicating, which is also one of the main, that's the first actual module in our program, Polyamory Mastery. That's actually the first thing we talk about. I actually took one of my couples through the process that we do in the first module of the program. And it was amazing to see how differently they communicated after just, an hour of spending time going through this process, this attunement, attachment communication training. Awesome.
It's amazing because I think the majority of people would say, of course I know how to talk and listen. I mean, it's like I do it all the time, but we do it and then there's doing it, right? So have we ever taken a course on how to communicate, how to listen? Have we ever been instructed on to do that? So we might just simply find our way to it by the demonstrations that our family had, and they may or may not have been very skilled at it. The point being, we can always elevate our game. We can find ways to listen more actively, to be able to converse in ways that will serve us, our partner in a relationships better.
Yeah. And you are going to have your needs met more readily if you actually communicate them.
Right. Not just leaving it to the other person to guess what you're wanting.
Yeah, exactly. I coach some other types of clients. I do some accountability coaching for a health and fitness program. And one of my clients was telling me last week about getting a new job. But they didn't want, there was a bunch of situations. They didn't want a full-time job. They wanted specific things. And, through our discussion leading up to that time and voicing your needs, they said in their interview that this is exactly what I want. And they laid it all out from what they wanted to pay, what they want, what kind of flexibility they wanted, all these things. And then they got them. And I was just like, they felt so empowered. And I think that's the amazing part of being able to communicate your needs is that you are more likely to get them and have that reward at the end. And, the important part is getting past the initial, oh, I shouldn't express my needs or that sort of thing. I think that sometimes gets in the way.
But whether we actually get the things we're asking for or not almost becomes secondary. It's the feeling of being empowered to say what's on our mind, right? That we spoke up for ourselves. Who knows what the results will be, but we were at least able to say, I'm valid and this is how I feel. This is what I want. This is not what I want, whatever it might be, but we are perfectly within our rights to say so. Yeah. In fact, if we don't speak for ourselves, who will? And very often it might not be the voice that's best for us. So speak up and say what you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
Communicate.
So now that we know how to communicate our needs, the number 4 way of amplifying your sex life is to try something new. And we touched a bit about this. So what's that thing you've always wanted to do, but were afraid to ask about?
Mm-hmm. You're asking me specifically? I think I've done a whole bunch of them. I'd have to think about what's on my list of what I've always wanted to do, but not yet been able to experience.
Yeah. Well, I think for some people, it's good to think about it in a few categories. So it's like, okay, what's something new? And you can, by all means, you can even Google 69 different sex positions. There's tons of YouTube videos. Mm-hmm. You can think of it under a couple of categories. So if it's helpful to kind of brainstorm, mm-hmm. You can do this on your own, and then you could share your list with your partner.
So different categories?
So different categories of try something new in terms of sex related things. So there's the idea of things that fall under the category of manual sex. So masturbation, mutual masturbation, genital stimulation, anal stimulation.
So these could be done by oneself with a partner or multiple partners.
Exactly.
Okay. Sounds like fun.
I'm just thinking if you're brainstorming, you're like, oh, where do I start? It's like you can kind of look at these different, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different categories and go, oh, these are the kinds of things I'd be interested under the category of manual sex. Mm-hmm. These are the types of things I'd be interested in under oral sex. So oral sex being cunnilingus, fellatio, swallowing, 69.
Analingus.
Analingus.
Yeah. But saying all that about those different things, about trying something new, it makes me think back to that axiom of try everything at least twice. Right? So the first time I was invited to try chicken feet, I thought, well, it's not really for me, but I thought, well, try everything twice. So I tried it and it was not fantastic. The second time I had already said, well, I've already tried it. It's not for me, but I thought, well, try everything twice. I tried it a second time. It was absolutely delicious. So now I have had enough experience that I don't really know, but I'm going to have to try it a third time. Yeah. Means to say I'm better off for having tried it than not having tried it. So when you are going through those, whatever's on your list of 69 items, we might be quick to say, well, I don't think that's not really for me. It's not something I'm really going to want. But have we actually tried it with an openness, with an open heart, try it. You might then really say, no, that's not for me. Or you might discover something new, but come into it with an openness.
Exactly. So one of the other categories is under sex play. So role play, delayed gratification,
Mm.
different locations, different positions, watching porn. Those are kind of things that fall under the sex play category of trying something new, like brainstorm.
Fun. I think we're going to have to start a list.
So I talked about Google searching sex position. There's some really great YouTube videos. I know there was one that is like the sex positions you must try sort of thing. I think at one point we had thought we would do a bit of a spoof on it because it was quite younger couple that was doing it. Like, here's the sex positions you must try if you're over 50, for example. Ooh, we can do that one now after July 11th.
Mm-hmm.
So another category is sex toys. So what types of new things would you like to experience as it relates to sex toys? So with cock rings, dildos, plugs, strap-ons, vibrators.
Interesting. As you're saying that, I was thinking about the sex toys that people might have. And I wonder if the majority of sex toys are bought by the individual themselves for themselves, or do we buy sex toys for our partners? And what would we buy for our partners? What informs us as to what they might like? Or is it maybe part of our fantasy as what we wish they would like?
Yeah. I mean, I bought you a sex toy.
You certainly do.
You bought me some before too.
Bought you a few.
Yeah, a few. And then having those sex toys either as part of, your own self-pleasure or incorporating them into sex. And we had a bit of a conversation about toys and incorporating them to sex the other day. Did you want to share something about that?
Oh, it was, I forget how we came across it, but it was an article I read. But yes, essentially we were talking about the pros and cons of pornography and sex toys, right? So some people want to kind of poo-poo on porn, saying that it is unrealistic, which it may be, or amateur porn, whatever it might be. But really the issue is that do we become sort of dependent upon it? So some people, a couple that I was seeing a while back, one of the participants in the couple said that they felt that their partner could only become aroused when watching porn. In fact, that porn had to be part of their play together. And if there was no porn, the partner wasn't that into it. So porn in itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It's the level of our threshold, the dependence that we might gain on it. Same thing with sex toys. Sex toys themselves are wonderful things, right? They might help us to discover whole new areas and sensations that we're feeling. But the other side of the argument, I guess, to balance it with the porn was, do we kind of raise the threshold to our sex toys? So I think I was telling you about a partner that I had a while back. They had this one sex toy that did about 6 different functions simultaneously, and it was wonderful. It really sent them over the moon. I felt that there was no way I could come in after that, I could only do maybe 1 or 2 things, do one thing at that time. So to do 6, I had this fantasy. Well, were they raising their threshold? Were they going too high on it so that their level of satisfaction, the level that would be needed to get them there, was it being increased? And then the conversation went, well, is that sort of like when we want to engage in our sensate, right? Mm-hmm. So we want to kind of recalibrate. We will bring our levels back down and we will rediscover things and then reintroduce these things. But the benefit being is that we can feel as though we are present with each other again. So in the first case with the couple where he felt that his husband was only able to get turned on when there was this porn, it was interfering with their intimacy. They were not being present together. Mm-hmm. It was taken away. So that was the idea behind it.
Oh.
But in themselves, sex toys and porn are fine.
Yeah.
But for what level, right? So
yeah. Sure.
Is it taking us away or is it allowing for a creative expression together?
Yeah. And I think we've been doing some experiments ourselves with introducing sex toys as part of our play together. And I think that's been really fun. I think for me, like I have various toys that do various things, but it doesn't replace for me the intimate connection I have with a human being. Like to me, that's a different experience. And I personally would rather have that human experience than have an orgasm any day. I mean, it's awesome if the human experience also ends in an orgasm, but I just find the human part of it, more fulfilling. So sure, and toy can get me off in 2 minutes if I really wanted to, but it's like, okay, and then it's over, right?
Right. So I wonder then if it has anything to do with the level of intimacy. So are you comfortable being intimate? And was this other person less comfortable being intimate with their partner?
Yeah.
Were they wanting to be, using it as a buffer?
Yeah.
It's possible.
Yeah, it's possible. Okay. So we're still in the 5 categories under trying something new. So we talked about sex toys. BDSM is another thing you could look at, things under there. So bondage, spanking, flogging, being submissive, being dominant.
A question about that though, BDSM, you can try it for sure. But do you think people are born kinky, born into kink, or is it something that they come to acquire?
I don't know. What do you think?
I'm not sure. I wonder if it's kind of like sort of parallel to being polyamorous or monogamous. Right? Do some people really do well in monogamy and they feel that they have that arrangement and it works well for them, and other people feel that they could never fit well into that. And is it nurture and nature? Is it a learned behavior, or is it just the way we are?
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like some of it's learned without going into a big conversation about it, but I certainly wouldn't have imagined myself being polyamorous when I was younger. Nor would I have thought probably I'd be into things that were, BDSM related. But I do find those things interesting and stimulating. So, I mean, learn maybe.
Possibly. But yeah, maybe it doesn't have to be part of our orientation, or if it's not, that's not to say that we couldn't participate in it, right?
No, exactly.
Yeah.
It's always fun to try, right? That's why these are things like trying something new. It may not be for you, but it might be fun just trying it, right?
Right.
So then
Which makes me, think of the next thing on your list, and that is having outdoor or public sex.
ooh, yes.
Right. Which, I guess we have to do our legal disclaimer. Don't put yourself in harm's way if you're going to do this, right? Because it's not always so well received in every arena, but it could also be rather stimulating and very exciting for a lot of people. They love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So things like going to a sex club or going to a nude beach even, making out in public. I don't know. There's all kinds of things. So if you go to a club, for example, you can just be a voyeur and watch, right? That could be.
Or an exhibitionist and just show off.
Yeah, exactly. Both those things.
Or someplace in between.
Huh?
Or someplace in between.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of both.
Yeah.
Well, then number 5 is the final one in amplifying your sex life. So you hinted at a bit already, but finding other methods of connecting and intimacy. So kissing, we've talked about kissing a few times. And I think, we've talked about this before, is that sometimes it's one of the first things to go in longer term relationships.
Yeah, it's interesting too, as you're saying about the kissing, and without sounding too divisive, no, that's not the word I'm looking for. Well, the kissing part, right? It's such an individuated thing because some people would have sex without kissing the stranger or the new person, and other people, all they want to do is kiss, but wouldn't have contact otherwise. And it's on a case by case basis. So find out who's across from you and what they're wanting, and let it be known what you're wanting and not wanting.
Yeah.
It always comes back down to that, doesn't it? The communication. Yeah.
And then, like you were mentioning earlier, there's other ways of connecting that don't involve like what you might consider to be sex. So you mentioned sensate focus.
Mm-hmm.
So for those that don't know what that is, this is a way of connecting with another person through our senses, through our 5 senses. So sight, sound, taste, touch. What am I missing?
Smell. So basically all the senses in your head and skin, touch. But what's beautiful about that is, again, we might often, I'll speak for myself, I might take these things for granted, or they go into the unconscious and I'm not even thinking about them. But in the sense that we're asking you to very much bring it to your forefront, bring it to the consciousness and be aware of it. Feel your partner's breath, smell them, taste them, be present with them. And wonderful, amazing things happen when you do that, when you allow for that.
Yeah. And I think if you're in the middle of things and you feel like you're in your head. And I think I sometimes get that way. You're like, I'm thinking about the next thing or what I have to do after is come back to the senses. And then you've taught me that. And I think that's amazing. But if you have felt disconnected with your partner, you can do a process of experiencing sensual touch and rediscovering things. And that's part of also what we talk about in the Sex and Desire module in Polyamory Mastery. So, yeah, which is why we talked about it today.
Yeah.
And all the other things.
But you're absolutely right. When I find myself leaving and I'm not so present, it really changes my experience, whoever I'm with, even if I'm by myself masturbating. But when I can bring myself back, invite myself gently to be back in the moment, wonderful things happen. It's just such an incredibly easy thing to do, and it pays off such wonderful dividends. So give it a shot. Consider doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Polyamory Mastery with TNA. So we just gave you a bit of a sexy taste of what we're including in the program. This is specifically for couples and two-person partnerships. So whether you're new to open relating or have been doing this for a while, it covers the basic of what you need to have to master your relationship. So it's if you want to stop arguing and attacking and really start communicating, because communicating, as we say all the time, is the number one thing I think we need to master in our relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're not able to communicate your preferences, your desires, your needs, your boundaries, your expectations, well, then you're kind of just throwing it in the bag and hoping you're going to get what you get. Whereas the other way, it's much more empowering and it's much more respectful of the other person as well, right? It's creating dialogue. It's creating opportunity to share these things.
Exactly. So some of the other things we do is we talk about attachment styles and how to become more securely attached with your partners. I think sometimes this is one of the things that people can get stuck in because they may have differing attachment styles, and we work with them. We'll work with you to bring you towards secure attachment. Create relationship agreements that work based on what you value in your relationships rather than on punitive rules. Because I think a lot of times when people start is rules that are intended to protect themselves. As we talked about last week, no longer be obsessed with feelings of jealousy and learn how to self-soothe as well as feel supported by your partners. And of course, like we talked about today, have some super sexy fun in your relationship.
Yeah. Even though it might sound like a program of work, it's actually about getting to have more and more fun. And it's a fun way of going about it. Even talking about the jealousy part at first might sound horrific. And yet, when we shed some light on it, we find out that these things actually will help us in getting a better, more comfortable position towards that.
No, and yeah, and of course, and you know, we are fun people. We're going to make this fun for you. It will be work and you will need to be committed to it, but we'll make it easy by giving you worksheets and things to work through. There'll be question and answer live sessions where you can ask your questions about whatever it was we talked about. So our job is to get you to where you want to be and to master your relationships, your open relationships. So we're super excited to start. We hope you'll join us. I'll drop the link in this broadcast, but you can always send us a message and we can set up a call to talk to you to see if it's for you.
Very exciting.
All right. Well, nice seeing you, Andre.
Nice to miss you too. Enjoy the time apart.
Okay.
I look forward to seeing you. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
If you want to explore polyamory, open up a relationship, or try your hand at swinging, we can help. Check out our website at taranandre.com for information on our Poly Newbies digital course or our deeper dive open relationship and polyamory mastery program where you get direct coaching from us. There's also other individual and couples coaching options there as well. Thanks for listening to the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast with TNA. Don't forget to subscribe and give us some love on your favorite podcasting platform. You can check out the show notes for any of the links to the courses or information we talked about today. Thanks and have a fantastic and sexy day.